Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome everyone to our World Mental Health Day Global Encounter. My name's Sarah, I'm with the Center for Global Education, and I'm joining you here in Edmonton, Alberta. Now, before we get started, I want to acknowledge that I am joining you from Treaty 6 land, which is the traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Nakota Sioux, Blackfoot, and Métis people. And I acknowledge all the many First Nations and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. Now in Canada, we must do more than just talk about reconciliation. So we do the land acknowledgement as a part of our working towards reconciliation. And it's a process. We have to embed it in our everyday lives, within ourselves and our families and our communities, our schools and events like this. And how do we do that constructively so that we remain committed to the ongoing work of establishing respectful relationships? And I think those land acknowledgements and building those respectful relationships are really resonate with today's topic of mental health. And how are we bringing Indigenous presence and voices within our institutions? And how are we fostering mutual respect and all that is embedded within reconciliation? So I think giving a land acknowledgement, I myself am on Treaty 6 land, and our speakers who will be joining today from Jack Talks are also joining us from Treaty 6 land. And I think that having that as a part of our welcome this morning is very apropos with our topic of today. So welcome everyone, and I encourage, if you are joining from Canada or America and you know your treaty land, that you as well acknowledge that as a symbol of what we're trying to do as we talk about mental health today. How do we talk about that? But what we'd love is if you are joining us today on YouTube, that you maybe put in the chat section there, what does mental health mean to you? Or if you're joining us and you want to send a tweet, what does mental health look like in your community, in your school? So I'd like to welcome you again, and I'm going to invite Carla Sutton, who's with Jack Talks, to introduce herself and her organization. Carla, over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Happy early Mental Health Day to everyone. I'm really, really happy to be here. I'm actually joining from Toronto, and the city of Toronto acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. So yeah, I'm joining from jack.org. I'm actually a staff member, but I'm joined by two wonderful Jack Talk speakers, Stephen and Cecita, and they'll be talking about mental health today, what mental health is, how to join the movement, that kind of thing. But I thought I'd kick things off with a little introduction to jack.org. We are a Canadian organization, a national organization, and although our programs aren't offered internationally yet, there are things you can kind of learn through jack.org that you can apply in your own communities. So our kind of mandate is youth-led, community-driven. So we train and empower young people across Canada to change the way we talk and think about mental health in their communities in ways that make sense in their communities. And we do that through a few different programs, including the Jack Talks program. Like I said, we're joined by two Jack Talk speakers today, so you'll get the full spiel on that. And yeah, I'm going to be sticking around today. Maybe I can post my email somewhere. If you ever want to get in touch with me and learn more about jack.org, get some ideas for your community, I'm happy to chat with you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Carla. So if you want to put it in the chat box here, your contact, and then I'll make sure it gets over to the live stream as well. We have one of our staff members is on there making sure the conversation is going and we're getting everything we want to back and forth. Now, before we roll over to Cecita and Stephen and their wonderful talk today, I'm going to give an opportunity for some of our schools to introduce themselves to our speakers. So I know that Queen Elizabeth has just joined, so maybe we'll start with our students in Soldotna. If you'd like, someone would like to stand up and introduce your school, and then we'll go to our students here at Queen Elizabeth, and then we'll go to our friends who are joining on our Zoom meeting from Bangladesh. Soldotna, over to you.
Hi everybody, my name's Derek, and we're from Soldotna, Alaska, which is in South Central Alaska, basically. We'd like to recognize the indigenous land we're on. The land we're on was occupied by the Dena'ina Athabascans, which were actually the only Athabascans to live on the coast, and the Dena'ina Athabascan culture was like a hunter-gatherer, and they also have a matrilineal system. This is how they say how you say thank you in their language. China. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. All right, Queen Elizabeth High School, if you have someone there who would be able to introduce, even if it's Mrs. Stewart, because I know that movement of students around classrooms is difficult these days.
Okay, we are Queen Elizabeth High School. This is my social 10-2 ELL class. Can you all say hi, wave? They're all a little nervous. They're like, why is there a camera on us? But we're looking forward to being part of the conversation today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Stewart and the class from Queen Elizabeth. You guys are welcome. And I know that some of you be around classrooms. If you have questions, you can, if you're in a class and you're allowed to use your phone, you can tweet us. You can put it on YouTube. I know there's some Queenie kids who are out on the YouTube stream watching you there as well, because they're not in their class. So you're welcome to add your comments there. I know our students from Brazil left our meeting here and just decided to join on YouTube. And so if you're there, ask your questions, tweet them. If you're in the meeting room and you have a question that you don't want to maybe ask in the general chat, or you don't want to be on screen to ask it, you can either chat myself or Miss Stewart, who's listed as Renee. And we can address those conversations in a private sort of way. We would love to have all of your comments and your questions. This is going to be a very interactive session as much as we can. All right, we're going to go to our friends now. And hello. I can see you.
Wait.
There you go.
Okay, wait. Okay, so hello everyone, this is Otandra Chaudhary along with my partner Momi as a representative of Vikarna Unknown School and College, Dhaka, Bangladesh. Today we are going to represent different aspects of mental health on the basis of our school and country. So speaking of mental health, the first thing that comes in our mind is mental disabilities and disorders. But mental health is so much more than just that. It includes emotional, physical, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps us determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Bangladesh being heavily
so we're gonna, I'm sorry to interrupt. You'll be able to present more later, because I know you have some wonderful slides to share. Right now, we're just gonna do some welcomes. Thank you so much for introducing yourself and your school. And I can't wait, Bangladesh, to get back to you, because I know you have a lot of important things to share. And we're looking forward to hearing your unique perspective from your experiences in Bangladesh. So thank you so much for joining. We're very excited to have you. What I'd like to do now is introduce our speakers for today. So our first speaker is Cecilia Ibrahim, and with experience in health research, project management, and community engagement, Cecilia enjoys working on local initiatives that promote mental health literacy and awareness. She believes that there's a power in conversation. Oh, I believe that too. And that through open communication, we are able to understand and learn from one another. She joined Jack.org as a speaker because it's a platform that allows her to cultivate candid and positive conversations about mental health and illness within our communities. When she's not giving a Jack talk, you can find Cecilia catching up with her loved ones, blogging, I'll have to give her a Google, and trying to do things, cross things off her bucket list. Can't wait to hear more. And then our other wonderful speaker today is Stephen Lynn, and he graduated from the University of Alberta with a Bachelor of Human Ecology and a minor in Youth Studies. He's currently working as a family engagement worker with young parents in Edmonton community, where he helps provide support as they work on achieving their goals. In addition to this work, he engages in volunteering in the community through financial education and youth leadership. For fun, he likes to play various sports as well as watch sunsets. And we have had a couple of amazing sunsets here right now in Edmonton. It is getting fallish, which means there's some northern lights. Have you guys seen aurora borealis? Well, I bet Alaska has way better northern lights. I don't, but for Canada, we had some good ones. I'm gonna roll over to Stephen and Sajida, if you guys wanted to take it from here.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yeah, we'll get started with the presentation.
Hi, everyone. As you already heard, my name's Cecilia. I'm so excited to be here with you guys all today. Me and Stephen are really excited to be doing this talk today for Mental Health Day online, which is very interesting. To kind of begin, just wanted to let you know that for the first portion of our presentation, we're going to be talking a lot and just giving information. And then the second half, we'll have lots of interaction and activity-based questions to which we'd like you guys to chime in. For the first half, if you guys have any questions or require any clarification on anything, please try to kind of just put your question in the chat if possible, or like the host said, send a tweet or let any of us know. And that way we can hopefully clarify if there is something that's not clear. To start off, we just wanted to talk about some important questions today. This is going to be the agenda, so what we'll be talking about today. Basically, we're going to be discussing how mental health is talked about in our communities. We're going to see what we already know of, what we don't, what do you consider mental health is. It's something that's different for everyone. Another thing is, how can we take action on mental health? What kind of things can we do to promote mental health in our communities? What kind of things can we do to promote mental health, our own mental health? And what are some good and easy ways that we can support others as well as ourselves? So mental health is something that's being talked about more and more, and it's important that we talk about it in a way that's educated and safe, and we really hope to do that today. When it comes to mental health, it wasn't something that was talked about when I was growing up, and I didn't really understand the concept until late into middle school. What happened is, I used to live in Ontario, and I have a outgoing personality and whatnot, and so I was always surrounded by people. I had lots of older cousins, lots of friends, and then my family decided to move us to Edmonton, and I had to start a new school on the other side of Canada. So that was a big change for me, and I was always kind of worried that I wouldn't make the connections that I had growing up back home. So when I got to my new school, it was not only a new school, but it was in a completely different province. I found everything to be extremely difficult, and I kind of had some difficulty at first trying to get accustomed to my new normal and new life in Alberta. Essentially, instead of being outgoing and reaching out to people, I was really timid and shy, and I was behaving in a way that wasn't really natural to me. And that was just because I was scared of making new connections. I just had it in my head that people don't like me. They've already known each other for years. I'm that new kid on the block. I'm not going to have any friends. And when you're 13 or 14, that's a big deal. We put so much value in friends and our relationships at school. So luckily at our school, we had a success coach where there was a little room. It was kind of like a school counselor where people would go in, play games, and would be a good place to kind of chill out. I'd go there lots because I didn't really have friends in my age group and in my classes. And it was actually that school counselor that kind of pointed out that the way I behaved in that little safe space was really different from how it's interacting with my peers. And after some discussion, we kind of realized that I wasn't reaching out to people, and I wasn't being friendly, and I wasn't making those connections because I was closing myself off and just staying to myself out of fear of being rejected. And that's when I kind of first realized that our thoughts do affect our behaviors and our feelings. And it is just kind of good to, get a good sense of where we are and where our thoughts are to see what our mental state is at. It was since then that I've kind of been more cognizant of how I'm feeling and how I'm treating others around me, and not always thinking that things are going a certain way because of me, and that there are many different things that can happen in your life, and it's kind of always important to check in on yourself and how you're reacting in order to make sure that you're at a good mental state.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. So now that we kind of have a general idea for that story, I'm going to firstly touch on like what kind of mental health is before we talk a little bit more about some of the things. So this might be a refresher for some people. It might not be for others. So just welcome you all along on this journey that we're all taking together. So kind of let's just talk about what mental health is. So as you can kind of see, it's a state of well-being that kind of affects our thoughts, feelings, and our behaviors, as we kind of mentioned. And generally what happens is our mental health throughout different points in our lives based on what's happening with our friends, our family, whatever it is that's kind of happening in our lives, we can kind of be at different points throughout where our mental health is. So it can kind of range from feeling very healthy, so feeling like you're very good when a lot of things might be going well for you, or you might have good coping strategies in place. You may have stress, and then it kind of goes based on struggling when you kind of might need a bit more support and kind of focus on that. Or you might be in a crisis where you kind of need more immediate supports in your life and kind of things to work on from there. So that's just kind of generally where our mental health might be at today, or just in general in our lives. For example, for me, currently I kind of feel like I'm in a healthy place with my mental health right now because things are going well at work. And all those things. So that's kind of where I range today, but it could be different based on what's happening. So now let's kind of talk about the other thing that kind of got mentioned earlier, actually, by our friends from Bangladesh, is kind of talking about how we tend to associate mental health with kind of mental illness. So mental health is different from mental illness, which mental illness is generally a cluster of symptoms or irregular patterns in terms of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And some examples of these generally include what we kind of see a lot with depression, anxiety disorders, PTSD, schizophrenia, general those things that require a doctor's diagnosis to kind of be diagnosed for. And generally this also lies on a spectrum with kind of no diagnosis to several mental illnesses, because people can have multiple different types of mental illness all at once and kind of overlapping, and kind of dealing with that in a spectrum on every day in your daily life. So now that we kind of talked about both of these aspects, let's kind of like talk about how they kind of combine together. Because obviously none of these are kind of in isolation, and they kind of overlap into this very, very fancy chart that kind of reminds me of math a little bit. But hopefully, yeah, just a little bit of math. But they kind of interact with each other. So kind of starting from the top left quadrant, so that would be the optimal health with several mental illness or severe mental illness. So despite having several or severe mental illnesses doesn't mean that you can't have optimal health based on what you are currently doing in your life. So you might have someone who understands what mental illnesses they have. They might be getting proper supports. That could be for just kind of a lot of general other types of supports there. So because of that, they might have very optimal health despite, or even though they have severe mental illnesses. So that is sometimes we have a perception of that not necessarily always being true. And then generally we can also find ourselves on the bottom left of the quadrant, or bottom right, sorry, if you look at it from my orientation. So that would be no diagnosable mental illness and generally having poor mental health. So for example, it could be someone with dealing with a recent loss, or just a lot of stressors in our lives, especially with everything currently happening in the world with COVID-19. This could be a lot more prevalent with people having general more poor mental health and struggling with kind of figuring out what to kind of do with a lot of uncertainty moving forward, despite not having any diagnosable mental illnesses.
All right, kind of just building on what Stephen was talking about, our mental health fluctuates. So we can go from healthy to stress to struggling and to in crisis. And based on where we are on that spectrum, we're going to need different types of support to get us back to our optimal state of mental health. When it comes to identifying what a struggle is, it's whenever when you have negative thoughts, feelings, or behaviors, but they're being experienced intensely and for a longer period of time and are kind of affecting your life in a big way. So you may not feel like going to school or working on your assignments. It may be more difficult for someone to get to work on time. Those are some examples of something having an impact on your life and your daily activities. In this case, it's really good to look at community resources or reach out to individuals who you feel are a good source of support. In that case, when it comes to identifying a crisis, it's essentially whenever someone is at risk of harming themselves or at risk of harming someone else. And in that case, emergency services should always be contacted in the incidence of a crisis. When it comes to mental health, there are a number of factors that can impact our mental health. And essentially, with those number of factors, it's important to understand how these factors interact and at what levels of control or influence we have. Once we kind of have a good idea of the number of factors and how we can kind of target each one to drive a positive change, it makes things easier for us to kind of promote mental health for both ourselves, our community, our family members, our schools, and the state of mental health promotion at our workplace as well. When it comes to the multiple factors, we're going to start with ourselves. So as an individual, we have our age, we have our past experiences, there are genetics. When it comes to certain mental illnesses, people are at a higher rate of experiencing some based on their heredity, or if there are any type of brain injuries. Your experiences can either give you a likelihood of developing a mental illness or not. Another thing is when we go and we look at our individual health behaviors, do we know about mental health? What do we think mental health is? What are our personal perspectives on it? We can also take a look at what attitudes and behaviors we have about mental health and illness and how they kind of shape our viewpoint of the two things. Another big factor is social support. When it comes to us going through our daily lives, if we're coming into struggles or we're feeling stressed, do we have social supports? Are there people in our lives that we can reach out to, say a sibling, a family member, or even a teacher? Beyond that, are there community support groups or leagues that we can join to get some support whenever we kind of need a boost or some assistance finding resources? Another factor to kind of consider is our living and working conditions. So, of course, the neighborhoods that we live in, the places that we work when we have a part-time job and whatnot, they do have an effect on our mental health. Are we in a safe area? Do we have autonomy? So do we feel that we're independent and free to make choices that affect ourselves? Are we getting support there? And do we have a work and life balance? Are we able to balance our schoolwork with our personal activities and whatnot? Everything is taken into consideration. Another major thing is actually access to health resources. So in our regions, do we have access to mental health resources? Do we know where to go to access these resources? And when we're going to these mental health services, are they competent? So are we getting what we need? Are they able to understand my mental health needs and provide the support that I am looking for? Am I satisfied or happy with the quality of health support I'm receiving? So places to get health services, that would be either community clinics, your family doctor, the emergency room, and whatnot. When we kind of break this down and look at the general scope of things, you'll see that a lot of our perspectives and factors that affect our mental health are kind of based in cultural norms and social norms as well. So what is our society in general saying about mental health? When we take a look at our cultural backgrounds, is mental illness something that's taboo and not discussed, or is it something that people are able to freely talk about? This all has an effect on how open we are to seeking mental health resources or even talking about mental health itself. Another way to kind of look at other factors that have a big impact on mental health are the structures, laws, and policies that we have around us. With the structures, laws, and policies, are there policies that make it harder for young people to get mental health support? Are we able to access these resources, or are the structures hard for, let's say, a 16-year-old to go out themselves, look for those resources, and try and obtain them? When it comes to mental health, it is complex, and all these interacting factors have a role in our mental health as well as that of our community. It's important to, once again, kind of always keep these specific factors in the back of our mind so we can figure out ways to make changes to any of them and potentially promote mental health.
Sorry, sometimes I forget I mute myself. Now that we kind of know a little bit more about mental health and kind of the factors that affect it, let's kind of talk about how we can kind of take some action ourselves in terms of what we're doing and kind of things there. So how can we kind of be there for ourselves? So the idea of how can we make sure that whatever is currently happening in our lives, that we are in a healthy or optimal mental health and mental state. So generally some things that you can kind of do. The first thing is kind of check in with yourself. So this is kind of very more focused on self-awareness. So the idea of, do you know what you kind of feel when you feel unwell? What does that look like to you? What are some signs that you personally notice? So for example, I tend to notice that I get really tired and really irritable when I'm personally not doing the best mentally. Another kind of a question there is kind of thinking about, how do you kind of practice self-compassion? So how do you kind of make sure that you are compassionate towards yourself? Because one thing that we kind of sometimes do, or at least I notice for myself, is that I can be very compassionate towards other people in my life. For example, like friends, I always give them a bit more compassion than I might give myself, in terms of like understanding and giving them like, hey, that's totally okay, things happen. But then when I'm talking to myself, sometimes I don't do that. So how can we kind of take those steps to practice that self-compassion and give the compassion that we give our friends and loved ones to ourselves as well? So that's all kind of within the checking in with yourself. And the next kind of thing is like, do what you need to do. So kind of things that we kind of talk about coping strategies or things that help you feel better. So some kind of questions you might be able to ask yourself is, what are some things that you're doing to actively build your self-esteem? So this could be things like creating a community, trying something new, or just doing something that you're good at, and like kind of being aware that these things kind of can help you feel better and kind of build that self-esteem component. Another part is also looking after your body's needs. Sometimes we, especially in a very busy life, and with a lot of things happening, sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves and, for example, drink water, eat food, getting the sleep that I need. But that's something that you kind of need to look at. The last final thing is kind of seeking help and support when you need it. So reaching out and kind of how open you are to reaching out and who you can kind of talk to if you feel like you are struggling. And yeah, so that's kind of some of the general aspects of that. We'll kind of talk a little bit more about that later on in an activity. So talking about people that can kind of reach out to. So who can we kind of reach out to? Just in general, well, here are some like things that you can kind of reach out to. So obviously like your trusted friends, any adults, your teachers, a school counselor or a success coach, people like that in your school and community. There's also community leaders that could be religious or just in general. There's obviously more formal supports that are a bit, that you kind of have to go through a bit more of a process to kind of access. So that includes like counseling centers and family doctors. So these are all people you can kind of reach out to that would help you, support you in the right way. And there's also things like anonymous helplines. I know that Kids Health Phone has recently branched out from my understanding, but they're a huge support in Canada for a text line. I've actually used to volunteer for their text line a while ago, and it was kind of just supporting people with their various things. So yeah, there's a lot of different supports there, and obviously if there are any mental health supports in your school or in your community, always feel free to reach out and talk to them. And yeah, this might be hard, but some things to kind of keep in mind is that there kind of isn't a problem that is too big or too small. I think something we tend to sometimes do is we compare our feelings, but I think it's important for us to remember that your feelings are valid and you always kind of deserve help. And the loss that you go through is always the most valid and the most important loss to you. So whatever that is, remember that it's okay to always reach out, and that no story is too small, and that everyone's story has worth. And it can kind of be a way for you to kind of get some perspective, focus in a different direction to kind of think on. Another thing to kind of keep in mind is there are very different types of resources out there. As you kind of saw from the previous list, there are a lot of different people you can reach out to, and there's many more that exist online and in different spaces. And it's kind of important to kind of take steps and focus on reaching out to different ones, because some might not work because you are very unique and mental health is very, very complex, and so is the support that is out there. So that what that means is generally if at first you don't find a support or resource that works for you, it's important to kind of keep trying because supports are so different. So finding something that might work might take a little bit, and remember that what works for someone else might not also work for you. So that is just some things to just kind of keep in mind.
All right, thank you, Stephen. So that was really good. Now I kind of want to delve into how we can be there for other people. Sometimes it is hard to kind of bring up the conversation if we see our friends are kind of feeling down or we're noticing some changes in them. It's so easy to ask a friend, how are you doing? While you kind of know they're struggling with something and they just kind of brush it off and say, that's fine. Here are the golden rules. There are about 5 simple steps you can take to really try and have those conversations and support people you care about. One is by starting off by saying what you see. If you're noticing some changes in your friend, let's say your friend used to be so excited and passionate about basketball, but with many changes in their life right now, they've kind of put it on the backside. They're skipping practice, they're no longer interested. You can kind of start the conversation off by saying something along the lines like, hey, I've noticed that you're no longer coming to basketball practice. You used to be so passionate about it. I'm here for you. And by saying I'm here for you, you're indicating you show that you care and you're here to support them. And you're essentially pinpointing a specific change you've noticed, showing that you care, and then asking them about how they're doing. It's really as simple as just being there for your friend or your relative and hearing them out. It's really important to kind of be supportive and let people know that you're here to listen, you're not here to judge. And it's important to know our roles. So for many of us, we're not mental health experts, we're not therapists, and we might not have the background and knowledge to provide specific mental health supports. So it's important to recognize our own limits, and in the events of a mental health crisis, seek emergency services and connect them to help. Or if it's a situation where your loved one is just struggling, what you can do is kind of refer them to many of the different resources Stephen was talking about earlier. So we can connect them to a teacher, a school counselor, a relative, or even let them know that they should talk to their family doctor about whatever they're going through. So with these 5 steps, we are able to try and support others in need and show that we do care. Another thing I would like to do here today is kind of just go on and reflect about how we can be there for ourselves. So Stephen was really great in terms of just trying to tell us how we can check in with ourselves, do what we need to do, and seek help when we need it. So I kind of wanted to get onto an activity where we'll be able to discuss that amongst ourselves. To begin, essentially, going back to the golden rules, what we can do is an activity regarding that. Essentially, I want to give you guys an example, and I'm gonna give you guys some questions, and I'd like you guys to kind of tell me what rules you think are being shown in this example. So I know for some of you guys are sitting kind of in a classroom. If it's okay, feel free to kind of have a designated person in your class yell out what golden rules you guys think are being applied in the situation, or feel free to put in the chat box. We'll kind of see how we'll be able to make it work within this structure. And once again, just kind of reminding you guys of the 5 golden rules. One is say what you see. The second one is showing that you care. The third one is hearing your friend out, just being there to listen and support. The fourth one is knowing our roles and what we're capable of. And number 5 is connecting them to help. Is everyone?
You know what, maybe we'll jump out. Maybe we'll say the first question goes to our friends in Alaska. And then if you have another one, we'll jump to our friends in Edmonton. And then, you know what I mean? And so then at least we know who to unmute.
Okay, that sounds good. So we can start with our friends with Alaska. So in this situation, basically, we're going to take a look and see how we can open the conversation. Say, what 2 rules would you best use when trying to confront a friend who you've noticed is kind of skipping school, not coming too often, is not picking up their phone, and you've noticed those changes? What 2 rules would you use basically to open up the conversation with your friend?
All right. We're gonna jump to our friends in Alaska.
Hi, my name's Sophia, and we decided that rule number 2 would be best. Thank you.
I know it's super quiet. I think they said rule number 2, show you care.
Yeah, that's actually perfect. So definitely showing you care, letting your friend know that you care about what's going on, you're here to support them. Another one we could also use to open up the conversation is saying what we see. So that's another one that could come in handy by indicating, hey, I've noticed you're kind of not showing up or picking up my phone calls. I'm here for you. Is everything okay? So thank you so much for that. And now we can go on to our second group. In this situation, what happens is you've shown or you've said what you see and you've shown that you care, but your friend is coming off a bit resistant. So they're saying, oh no, I'm fine, like I don't want to talk about it. What kind of rules do you think would help you when they're coming off as resistant?
All right, this one is going to our friends at Queen Elizabeth High School.
I just have to reframe it, so just give us a minute.
You bet. So, again, our 5 golden rules are say what you see, show you care, hear them out, know your role, connect them to help. Wonderful. So soon after this, we're going to have some chance for questions for our speakers. And then we wanted our friends from Bangladesh to share a bit about their experiences in that school, in their school in Bangladesh. And we have a few. I'd love to share one of the infographics that came through our virtual classroom as well that was submitted by our friends up in Alaska.
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Queenie students are shy apparently today. They say show that you care.
Stay with them.
Stay with them.
Talk to them all the time.
Talk to them all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah, those are amazing answers. So definitely when you're...
How are they feeling? And if they say they're good, ask them what made you feel good today.
Good.
Put them in a corner to tell you the truth. it's just a matter of time and they will just tell you. Awesome.
A lot of
That's
great strategies. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I completely agree. Definitely, you do want to show that you care, that you're here for your friend. You're just trying to support them in any way that you can. Another important thing to kind of realize is maybe just knowing our role and implementing that role. It could be that maybe that individual isn't comfortable talking to you about what they're going through. And in that case, that's absolutely fine. You can actually just suggest they talk to someone else and maybe connect them to better help. And for our last one, just wanted to wrap it up with how can you continue to be there for your individual. So with that said, essentially, you've shown your golden rule, some of your golden rules. Which golden rule specifically would you use to implement this one, showing that you'll still be there for your friend?
All right, who wants to jump in on this one? Cooper, Daniel? Braden, I know you guys did your awesome infographic that focused on this. Would any of you like to put in a suggestion? Friends from Bangladesh, anyone? Everyone's feeling a little quiet today. I think they're taking it all in.
If you guys are having trouble, coming up with which rules would go in that, feel free to let me know and I can kind of give my opinion as well.
I think that we can, I think maybe in the chat we have a few coming in.
I think that in order to continuously be there for our friend, we'll have to hear them out. We can use the hear them out rule and we can use the connect them to help rule. Why I say that is because when it comes to our mental health, it's not a one-day situation or a one-time situation. We all have mental health 24 hours a day, and it's going to fluctuate from time to time. When we notice a friend is struggling, we can, of course, connect them to help by knowing our rule, but we can check in from time to time, see how things are going, and just be there to support them and hear them out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ceci. That was such a great way to tie your earlier points together in your presentation with an activity to really sort of think like, how would I actually do this? Because I think sometimes we want to reach out to our friends. We want to reach out to our family when we see that they're struggling, but we don't know how to do it. We don't want to make things worse. We don't want to say the wrong thing. And what I hear you saying is that if we approach it with empathy, that you can't really say the wrong thing. It's letting someone know that you care for them and that you want to be there for help, or that you want to help connect them. But if you approach it from a place of warmth and kindness and openness, that you can't maybe say the wrong thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
Wonderful. Now, Stephen, if you wouldn't mind stopping your share for a second, I would love to see if any of our students or schools have a question for our speakers here. Maybe we'll pop up in the same order we've been going so far, over to Alaska and then to Queen Elizabeth, and then to our friends at Bangladesh. Now, if you don't have a question, totally fine. You can just say, give me a no. Or you can pop it in the chat if you're interested, or if you're on YouTube, type it on YouTube. We're over there as well. We're bringing stuff in. So we'd love to open up to Saldana. Now, it's been a little quiet on the microphone, so you're gonna have to talk really loud.
Go ahead, you can go and come up a little bit, mask off. Go ahead. Right there is good.
Hello everybody, I'm Derek, and I have a question for Carla. Have you ever had to help anybody with a mental illness, or have you experienced, like, a first-hand experience with any mental illnesses or anything? Thank you.
Hey, Derek. The question was for me or for Cecita and Stephen?
It was for you.
For me, okay. Yeah, I work for a mental health organization, so oftentimes these conversations do come up, especially with like young people that get involved in our programs. But I've also had to support a close friend who was really struggling, they were actually in like the red zone. And so I applied the golden rules, but I stuck mostly to like knowing my role and connecting them to help because they were really, really struggling. So knowing my role, it's there to listen and to validate and then connect them to appropriate help. Because like Cecilia and Stephen mentioned, I'm not a therapist. It would be kind of doing my friend a disservice if I tried to claim like I had all the answers and that I could give them the proper support. So I connected them to a professional.
And I know that Alaska might have a follow-up, but I mean, how did it feel? Like, did you feel vulnerable? Because I think sometimes we're worried about opening that door, and how. So what maybe was the self-care aspect of that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say one thing to just kind of own and recognize is that it's going to feel very vulnerable. It's going to feel probably uncomfortable and like maybe even a little bit like wrong, like, but that's okay. I think the key is to first and foremost, I mean, make sure that you're okay, but secondly is to make sure your friend is okay. And then once they're connected to the proper support, then the self-care becomes kind of like decompressing. And who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to debrief with? So whether that was a friend of mine or it might be an adult for you, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Thanks. So we had a question off YouTube, and then next we'll go to Queen Elizabeth. So you guys can keep working if you're trying to think up one. With how does social media, for Stephen and Sajida, how does social media impact our mental health?
That's a really good question, especially since social media is so like pervasive. It's everywhere right now in our world. Basically, it really changes. I think a big sorry, I thought I unmuted myself, but essentially I think a big thing about social media and its impact on me kind of depends on what I'm, consuming. So if I'm going through social media and, I feel like it's relevant mental health knowledge or things I'm interested in, then it kind of like boosts me up and kind of gets my creative juices flowing. But it's also really easy to kind of go through social media and compare yourself to people who kind of always seem to have everything going perfect for them. So it has its ups and downs. What I try to do essentially is just remember that when it comes to social media, it's just the highlights. So we don't really post about our bad days or, when we're going through things, but we're posting when we're going on trips or having fun with our friends. So it's important to kind of recognize that not everything is like how it seems and that everybody has their normal day-to-day life, and I try not to compare myself to anyone or anything I'm viewing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, our friends at Queen Elizabeth High School, did you have a question you'd like to ask?
We have one. You got to come up and ask. She's shy, but she's coming. Come on, Miss Key. Okay. It's okay. You're good.
My question is that about mental health illness, that there's some countries that don't know about it and there's no treatment. How are you guys as an organization trying to do about that?
Did you guys hear her?
Yeah.
Awesome.
There are some, I'll just paraphrase and you let me know if I'm doing a good job. Some countries don't really talk about mental health, or they don't recognize it as like a real thing even, and so support doesn't exist, and you're wondering what we as an organization are doing to help. First I'll open up to Stephen and Cecita if they have anything they want to say, and then I can try responding as well. No? Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Cecilia.
Oh, so sorry.
No,
I was going to say, yeah, I can totally relate to that question. The thing is, jack.org is primarily based in Canada, and what we're really doing is basically trying to get those conversations about mental health and illness started in our specific communities. And so I think we have a lot of good programs that kind of give you the tools to do that and have those conversations at home or with your friends in your community. And definitely you can bring it to specific cultural communities or religious communities as well. So I think that's how we're kind of starting. Like this year, I ran a mental health summit with Jack.org for Muslim youth specifically, just because it is such a big taboo topic in the Muslim community, for example.
Well said,
Wonderful.
Safida. And I'll
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Oh.
Do we need to move on? I can jump in with one little piece. Safida said it beautifully, but yeah, I would say just to kind of build off of that, a lot of the times when it comes to conquering this, which is kind of a beast and it's different in every country, it's different in every community, starting the conversation is huge. So you can kind of break down these barriers to mental health into three big categories. Stigma, which is, you know, people have negative attitudes around mental health. They don't believe it's a thing. There's, you know, people think that you're crazy if you're struggling with your mental health. And then we also have, I'm blanking on the second one. Attitudes, knowledge. So whether or not you're informed about mental health. Does information exist? You being part of this Jack Talk today is you getting informed about mental health. It's a step in the right direction. And then systems, which is really, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, the student who brought up this question. It's really kind of what you were getting at, the systems in place, right? There is no system supporting mental health support in some countries. There are no counselors. No one is having that conversation. So I just wanted to kind of categorize some of the different barriers, and hopefully that gives a little bit more context, but lots of work to be done in mental health globally.
And I think that's a great segue to our friends in Bangladesh. I know that they want to share a little bit about what mental health supports looked like in their own country and in their school. And so I welcome them to unmute. I know that Tasmin and Atandrilla, would you like to unmute and introduce your school?
Yeah. So as I was saying, in Bangladesh, being highly impacted by poverty, it is struggling to cope up with the challenges it's facing regarding mental health. Nearly 17% of adults and 14% of children in Bangladesh are currently suffering from mental health issues. Yet, among them, 92.3% don't even seek mental attention due to lack of knowledge. Superstitious beliefs and social stigma prevents individuals with mental health conditions from seeking care. Beliefs that mental health disorders are untreatable or are the results of even influences are also play an important role. Women are both vulnerable to experiencing mental disorders and less able to access treatment due to their low social status. Even through mental health in serious issues in Bangladesh, mental health expenditures from government health department are very insignificant and are less than 0.5%. Again, this COVID-19 pandemic didn't make the situation any better. In Bangladesh, people with anxiety symptoms and depressive symptoms are 33.7 and 57.9 respectively. About 85.6% suffer from mild to severe symptoms of stress. The general people staying in a monotonous and unusual anxious state at home are experiencing helplessness, blaming others to be responsible, and slowly progressing to a mental breakdown. So the second, I guess Momi would say the rest.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah.
So, considering all these serious issues related to mental health, the government organizations, along with NGOs, are coming forward with effective ideas to protect the youths. In our country, non-profit organizations are arranging innumerable creativity-based competitions. With the help of online social platforms, teenagers and kids are being able to attend there, which helps a lot to refresh and re-energize their monotonous home time. For adults, there are various sessions for meditation, arranged by NGOs. Schools are also organizing various online events with the help of their students under the guidance of respective teachers. To make the time productive in our Vikarnesa, events like art competition, story and poem writing competition, and get together are being arranged on a regular basis in these last 6 months. Students have the opportunity to contact the teachers for any sort of queries who are really caring towards us. Last month, we, the students of grade 9, arranged a program with our classmates called the Evening Show on our own, where we get the chance to do various things including singing, recitals, and other interesting presentations. It was really helpful for all of us as we get the opportunity to enjoy with our friends with whom we can't meet physically right now for COVID-19. We hope that we'll be able to work with our fellow classmates and respectable teachers with the view of forming a better environment without intense mental pressure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Now, Cecita, I see Stephen's turned his camera off, so I'm gonna know, I know you're here. What does that make you think? Like when you hear about what they're doing in Bangladesh in their schools, like they've started art sharing, they've started reading groups, they've started these activities. What does that make you think about? Does it resonate? You know, how is it similar to what we're doing in Canada or different?
Yeah, no, I loved hearing about all the things you guys are doing in Bangladesh. I think it's amazing, especially with all these programs. I'm assuming they're youth-led. You guys really are creating or promoting mental health with these little activities and, you know, sharing mental health information. It really does start with having the conversation and providing people with safe space, you know, to get their feelings out either in different activities and engaging in stuff that boost your self-esteem, which also promotes your mental health. So I think you guys are doing amazing. And it's, I think, quite similar to here in Canada with students starting groups at school and clubs all about mental health and mental health promotion.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to share, we had also one of our students, or a group of students in Alaska had, on our virtual classroom, had made an infographic. And, you know, in these, I wanted to share, is Braden and Daniel and Cooper, I think, and they're on our Zoom room. But I think it's, during these times of COVID, it's interesting to think of ways, whether we're making posters, whether we're holding online, even book clubs, or what are ways that we as youth, it's not just about someone else, you know, coming in and solving our mental health issues, right? It's what are we doing within our communities, within our friends groups, within our families to change the attitudes and perspectives and conversations around mental health. And so even things, I don't know if Braden or Cooper or Daniel, if you wanted to unmute and tell us a bit about what you were thinking when you made this infographic or how you chose the pictures. We would love to hear from you, or how it resonates. Maybe even Soldatna, if you wanted to unmute yourself and say, how do these conversations in Bangladesh and Canada, because Jack Talk is Canadian, how does it resonate with what's going on in your community? And are there mental health supports in your community? I know I kind of putting you on the spot here, Alaska. All right. Oh, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I unmuted Cooper or Daniel or Braden. Go ahead and unmute and share something with us, please. Thank you.
All right, I chose these pictures. I chose yoga because I thought it was kind of like you recharging at the end of the day, taking a break and relaxing, and reading was also that too. And then doing your physical health for the working out to improve your self-care. And the 5 golden rules.
Awesome.
Thank you.
No problem. I think it's wonderful. In Canada, I'll just briefly say, I know we're over, so thank you to everyone who's joined. If you need to pop out, I totally understand. Thank you so much to our speakers for joining us as well today. I just wanted to quickly say that if you're a student in Canada, there's something called risingyouth.org. and it's an organization that's funded through the Canadian government, and they supply grants to students between the ages of 15 and 30 to do activities like this. If you wanted to make an online support group for your friends where you read a book together or you do yoga together, they'll supply the funds where you could go onto Amazon, send everyone a yoga mat, and then you do a group sort of maybe relaxation activity. So if you have an idea of some way to address mental health or within your community, I very much encourage you to go to risingyouth.ca and look into their funding scheme to help fund that, because sometimes we can have great ideas, but we don't feel like we have the resources to make them happen. And this group wants to give you funds to help this happen. And I'm not sure, there might be similar things in Bangladesh or the US or Brazil or any of the other countries that are joining, but I do know that about Canada. Now, before we end today, I just wanted to have one last opportunity for any of our speakers to close out. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Cecita. Thank you, Stephen. Our friends in Alaska and here in Edmonton at Queen Elizabeth High School. Those that are joining us online from Brazil and Japan, and the other countries that have said hello. Bangladesh, our wonderful information from Bangladesh. But Cecita, Stephen, are there any last words as we head into Mental Health Day tomorrow that you'd like to encourage for our students?
Just want to thank you all for attending and sorry, go ahead. Yeah, just thank you all for attending and having us be a part of the amazing questions as well as what you are all doing in your communities. So that has been really cool. And yeah, and I'll pass it away to you.
Yeah, so just kind of echoing what Stephen said, thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure. I'm so glad I got to talk to you guys today. And to kind of just sign off, try to take care of yourselves, to do things that bring you joy, and understand that our mental health or state of mental health will always change throughout our lives. And it's important to kind of reach out for help when we need it.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Have a good World Mental Health Day. Check in with yourself and your friends. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.